Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange. Today I'm here to do a second part to my most anticipated science fiction for the rest of 2021. This is covering adult science fiction from June until the end of the year. As I mentioned, this is part 2, so I'm not going to include, for the most part, any books that I discussed in my previous video. So that's why things like Project Hail Mary, which I am really excited to read, won't show up on this list. But you know me, I am trying to read as many new releases as possible and give you those reviews. So these are the books that are currently on my radar, not an exhaustive list of every single science fiction book coming out, but these are the ones that I think could be really amazing that I'm going to try to get my hands on and hopefully turn around and give you all some thoughts. All that being said, I of course want to mention that these dates are subject to change, especially this year, and they are based off of North American, specifically Canadian release dates, so it might be slightly different depending on where you're living. Otherwise, let's get into the books themselves. First, in June, we have Rabbits by Terry Miles, and this is a techno thriller that is involving a secretive game that is supposedly has these amazing prizes, and this is based off of a podcast, which I have not listened to, which is kind of unusual, but the premise of the book just sounds so good, so I'd love to know from anyone who's listened to the podcast if they're interested in the book. But this one is getting compared to things like Ready Player One, because it's kind of that Easter egg adventure game with great prizes, so it definitely sounds up my alley. Then moving on to July, we have The Freedom Race by Lucinda, and this is set in a future after a second civil war has taken place in the United States, and specifically follows one black woman who is going and entering herself into this race in order to hopefully gain her own freedom. This is a piece of speculative dystopian fiction, and it certainly sounds like it's going to have some great social commentary, and I'm really looking forward to this one. I actually might wait for the audiobook experience because I feel like this is kind of the book that would be best listened to with an own voices narrator, which I'm expecting them to get. So definitely one I'm keeping my eye out for. Next, we have The Fallen by Ada Hoffmann, which is one of the few sequels on this list. This is a piece of cosmic horror science fiction that involves artificial gods that rule over humanity. And in the second book, physics has been upended, and we follow characters that are trying to survive and also start a revolution in order to fight against these evil AI. And I am definitely interested in this one. I read the first one and liked it, but didn't love it. But it's a series I did want to come back to. The author herself, Ada Hoffmann, is autistic, and she writes own voices stories with a main character that is autistic as well, and that is a particular form of neurodiversity that has become very close to my heart, and so I'm very interested in returning to the world. And again, the fact that it involves cosmic horror definitely appeals to that side of my reading taste. Then moving on to August, we have Reclaimed by Madeleine Roux, and this is another science fiction thriller. This one follows a woman who agrees to get this new scientific treatment in order to have her memories erased to get rid of these traumatic memories of her past. However, as you would expect, something goes horribly wrong, and perhaps the treatment is doing more than it should and is erasing memories that it's not intended to. And so she needs to go and basically try to get out of this situation. It sounds like a really good movie plot. I do have to be honest that I read Madeleine Roux's previous book, Salvage, and was not super impressed. So I'm holding off requesting a review copy from the publisher, and instead I'm going to try to get a copy from my library because this one might miss the mark for me as well, but the premise sounds too good, so I definitely want to at least try it out. Also in August, we have 25 to Life by R.W.W. Greene, and this is set in a near future where the world is ending. It follows a young woman who is overeducated and underemployed, living with her mother. However, she decides to go off and spend the rest of her time on Earth with a group of traveling artists and other people that are going around in camper vans, driving through the countryside. And the story, I'll be honest, from the premise, doesn't actually sound particularly up my alley, but I got the chance to read the author's previous book, The Light Years, earlier this year and really enjoyed it. So I'm very interested in this one just based off the fact that I think the author is a really good storyteller. And this one might surprise me. It definitely sounds a little bit similar to something like Station 11, which yes, I have not read, but definitely mean to. And so yeah, I'm curious to give this one a try for sure. It's an interesting premise to say the least. Next we have Light Chaser by Peter F. Hamilton and Gareth Powell. This is a novella that follows a man who is called a light chaser because he is an explorer that travels the galaxy by himself, except for the companionship of the artificial intelligence in his ship. I'll be honest, I'm very tempted to read this book because I've never read Peter Hamilton before, and unlike his standalone work, this one as a novella is going to be short. I definitely do want to read things like Pandora's Star, but the length has always intimidated me. I have read the other author before and did enjoy his space opera, so I'm curious to see what these two authors can do together. And yeah, again, it's novella, so it would be a very easy one to dive into with a great premise. I love a spacefaring book. Moving on to September, we have The Annual Migration of Clouds by Premee Mohamed. This book is set in Canada, specifically in Alberta, and follows a young woman in a post-apocalyptic setting where she has an opportunity to get away and save herself from her life, or gets another opportunity instead to go on a dangerous mission that will help to save her family and uplift them out of the situation that this post-apocalyptic world has left them in. This book is described as hope punk, which I think coming out of 2020, we all need more of that in 2021. And this book is also written by the author of Beneath the Rising, which is a book that I really enjoyed last year, a piece of cosmic horror. And so I'm definitely intrigued to read more by this author. I believe it's only novella length, so again, something very easy to fall into. And it just sounds like the hopeful twist on a dystopian story that I'm looking for right now, because I'll be honest, I don't read a lot of dystopian these days because life is just too similar sometimes. Then we have Light from Uncommon Stars by Ryka Aoki, and this is about a transgender runaway who agrees to make a deal with the devil where they need to convince 6 other violinists to sell their soul in order for success. This book is described as being similar to the Wayfarer series by Becky Chambers, and I'll be honest, from the premise, it sounds like it might be a little too lighthearted for my personal taste. It certainly sounds more fantastical, but it does have that sci-fi label on it, so I will give it a try because I'm always looking for queer representation, especially transgender. It's not something I read enough of. I believe this book is own voices, and definitely, again, I'll give it a try and I'll see if it fits my taste. Then we have You Sexy Thing by Kat Rambo, which follows a former military unit that decides to open up a restaurant. They get pulled into a plot where they have to protect their restaurant, which means getting on a ship and fighting against space pirates. This book, once again, might be too silly or humorous for my personal taste in science fiction, but it also sounds like a lot of fun, so I just have to try it out. This book is described as Farscape meets The Great British Bake Off, and I do enjoy foodie books, even though I'm not much of a foodie myself, so I'm hoping that it will whet my appetite and just be as much fun as that synopsis sounds like it will be. Now, moving on to October, we have Destroyer of Light by Jennifer Marie Brissett, and this is set 300 years in the future where the Earth has been destroyed and the sole survivors now live as refugees on another planet. I understand that the story follows 3 different perspectives and is being compared to authors like Octavia E. Butler, who is one of my favorite science fiction fantasy writers. So I'm very intrigued by the premise. The cover is gorgeous. Like with pretty much all the books on this list, the cover artists are killing it this year. And it's definitely one I would love to get my hands on. And also in October, we have Far From the Light of Heaven by Tade Thompson. And this is a space opera book set in a future where there is a group of colonists that are going to disembark at the Logo system, where they are going to colonize a planet. They have been set into chronic sleep so that they can survive through this long journey. And however, when they are waking up, they find out that some of them are not going to wake up because they have been killed. This is a bit of a mystery setup because they have to find out who is behind all of this, and I understand there's a lot of political scheming going on. The premise sounds fantastic. This is the same author who wrote the Rosewater trilogy, which shamefully I have not yet read but really want to, and I'm hoping this will be a great place to start with their work. And yeah, it just sounds fantastic. I think it's going to have some great own voices representation with a Black author behind this work. And it's just, again, an author I've been meaning to read more of his work for quite a while. I have read his horror novellas about Molly Southbourne, but I really need to get into his proper sci-fi, so very excited for this one. And last, I can't get through this video without giving a bonus mention to Leviathan Falls by James S. A. Corey, the 9th and final book in the Expanse series, which is coming out in November, and I am so excited for it. I did mention it in my previous video, but now we have a date, and it's coming up so fast, but not soon enough, and I'm very excited. I'm currently rereading through the series in preparation for it. It's an amazing space opera series. If you're new to science fiction or a veteran of the genre, it's definitely worth checking out. I think it has a lot of wide cross appeal, and yeah, I just cannot wait to see how this series is going to wrap up. It's going to be so good, and I'm so excited. So that is it for this video. I'd love to hear of the books I mentioned. Which ones are you most interested in? If you're trying to check them out and we're furiously writing down titles, remember that I do put the names and links to Goodreads in my description box so that you can add them to your list. Hopefully you can find them through your library or pre-order them, whatever the case is. And I would love to know basically which ones would you like me to prioritize for reviews on my channel. If you're new to my channel, I do read a lot of science fiction as well as fantasy, thrillers, and horror. And you can help me out by giving this video a thumbs up, sharing it around online, and you can hit that notification bell if you never want to miss a video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.